Hi everyone, welcome back to my Elden Ring series where I make a build for every melee weapon in the game. In this episode, I'll be covering the Black Knife. The Black Knife is a dagger that requires 8 strength, 12 dex, and 18 faith to wield. It deals physical and holy damage, scaling primarily with dexterity and faith. It can be acquired by defeating the Black Knife Assassin just outside the entrance to the Sainted Hero's grave in the Altus Plateau. This weapon has a unique skill called Blade of Death, which launches you up in the air and shoots forth a projectile of destined death, which deals holy damage, reduces enemies' max HP, and inflicts a damage over time effect. For this build, I went for a Dexterity Faith hybrid setup, and I am power stancing the Black Knife alongside the Blade of Calling, which gets similar Dex Faith scaling. My playstyle involves taking advantage of the dagger's excellent weapon skill, which I essentially use as my opening move for any boss fights or encounters with larger enemies. With the Destined Death effect, the initial strike on an enemy will rip off a percentage of their max HP, and all hits will apply percentage-based damage over time, similar to the Black Flame effect. But I believe this is even stronger. Another benefit of this skill is that it gives us very good hyper armor, making it hard for enemies to interrupt us while we are attacking them. I also like to use my power stance daggers for regular melee attacks throughout most of my fights, and they are pretty good, especially against enemies weaker to holy damage. We don't get to take advantage of any status effects here like some of our other power stance dagger builds do, but our good damage combined with the Destined Death skill makes up for it. For my stats, at level 150, I have 50 Vigor, 26 Mind, 18 Endurance, 10 Strength, 45 Dexterity, 10 Intelligence, 60 Faith, and 10 Arcane. 50 Vigor is the minimum I am comfortable with at endgame levels, and Mind is worth a substantial investment with this build as the Blade of Death skill is fairly expensive, costing 25 FP per use. Our damage stats are split fairly equally between Dexterity and Faith, keeping with the Black Knife's innate scaling. The Blade of Death skill scales only with Faith, however, so I allocated a few extra points toward that. Our offhand Blade of Calling also gets fairly optimal damage out of this stat spread. I like how these two daggers mirror each other and give off a sort of yin and yang type of vibe, with one being sacred and radiant, and the other much darker and corrupted. They even share the same animation for their respective weapon skills. And that is part of the reason I wanted to make a build that uses these two weapons together, as I really like the idea of playing as a character that is sort of suspended halfway between light and darkness and utilizes the power of both. I took this idea as inspiration for the armor set I am using with this build, which consists of the Black Knife Assassin hood and chest armor, combined with the twinned gauntlets and greaves. What I like about this look is that you can clearly see a sort of fusion of the aesthetic of the Golden Order with that of the Black Knife Assassins. Perhaps this character used to be some sort of holy warrior who discovered the Black Knife and is now gradually being corrupted by the influence of Destined Death. Or alternatively, maybe they were a member of the Golden Order who became disillusioned and defected to the Black Knife Assassins, or vice versa, and now wields the knowledge and power of both factions. I definitely think there is potential for an interesting backstory here, and if anyone has any ideas for a good backstory, please feel free to share it in the comments. I would love to hear what others are able to come up with. Now getting back to the build, let's talk about the talismans I am using. I first have the Carrion Filigreed Crest to alleviate some of the FP cost of our weapon skill, which makes a noticeable difference on this build. Then I have Millicent's Prosthesis for more damage after successive attacks, which pairs well with the fast-hitting dual-wield daggers. This talisman also gives us an extra 5 points in dexterity, bringing us up to 50. And next is the Rotten Wing Sword Insignia for even more successive attack damage. The regular Wing Sword Insignia is an alternative option if you don't have access to the Rotten version. And finally, I have the Dragon Crest Great Shield for more defense. Another option would be the Shard of Alexander, which seems like an obvious choice, but I actually decided against it this time, since it only boosts the raw holy damage of our weapon skill and has no effect on the damage over time percentage, which is where most of the skill's power comes from. For the Flask of Wondrous Physic, I am using the Holy Shrouding Crack tier for more holy damage, as well as the Green Burst Crystal tier for faster stamina regeneration. And that is going to be all that I have for this Black Knife build. Here's an overview of my setup from the menu screen. Before I end the video, I wanted to mention that after this, I'm planning to move on to the Straight Swords weapon class. I know there are more daggers from the DLC, but to be honest, I'm sick of making dagger builds for now, so this seemed like a logical stopping point as the final base game dagger. Once I get through all the base game weapons, I will go back through all the classes to cover the DLC weapons, of course. That's all for now. Thank you for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you next time.